Welcome to Stories of Essex Limited, brought to you by Made in Essex. I'm Jill Willis, and in this series I've been joined by Doug Bentley, Corporate Finance Partner at Grant Thornton, and Adam Jones, Corporate Partner at Birketts. Together, we've lifted the bonnet on the Essex Limited report and explored the growth stories of the county's top 100 and fast growth 25 alumni. In this episode, we're joined by Stefan Payne, CFO of Titan Airways, the King's Award-winning commercial and passenger charter airline sitting at number 29 on the Essex Top 100, making it one of the highest turnover privately owned firms in the county. Stefan, welcome to Stories of Essex Limited. I think I speak for all of us when I say how excited we are to be sitting around the table with you today. So 37 years you've been flying for, turning over 140 million, and congratulations at hitting 29 on the top 100 spot. Can you share with us a bit of the Titan Airways journey and some of the key milestones that you've encountered along the way?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, we were founded 37 years ago by two individuals. One of those is still our shareholder now, 100% owner, who bought out his co-founder through private equity in the 90s, I think it was. And we acquired back from them in 2012 to take it back to 100% private ownership. And since then, it's been a journey of evolution. The fundamentals of the founding principles of what Titan stands for still, even 37 years later, are very much through our core. We've done many different things over that time. It's evolving with technology, with aircraft, with markets. And we don't really know from 1 year to the next what that looks like, and that's no different through the past. You compare us to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there's lots of different elements that we did then that we don't do now, and vice versa. So it's very much moving with the times and evolving.
And you've flown footballers, wines. You know, you've transported doctors, you know, as part of an aid drive. What are you transporting, and what how many flights have you got going every day?
So I suppose we sit in a very niche part of the industry that most people don't know about. So we've got 12 aircraft, ranging sort of the large aircraft, not private jets. We have one private jet, but we also 180 seaters, 200 seaters, wide body freighters, narrow body freighters. And again, when you look back over the history of Titan, we've got a board in our office that shows all the various aircraft type, and it is a scattergun of so many different types. But that's part of the nimbleness of what we do. And again, through history, we transported cargo and passengers in all different shapes and sizes, from more bucket and spade leisure through to high-end exclusive tours, and we do that today. You touched on the wine. That was a particular COVID requirement. I think someone wanted to escape this country at lockdown time to their yacht in the Med, and felt the need to take their private wine collection with them, and needed an aircraft to take it. So that's not something you do every day, and it's not something we do every day. It was a pretty unique one. But then we also, like you say, football teams, international football teams, Champions League football teams, band tours when they're on a continental tour, the round the world race that happened, we supported the crew for that, film productions for all the big name film production companies you would know of, supporting cinema, blockbuster films in terms of moving crew between different locations, 7 marathons and 7 continents in 7 days. It's a pretty challenging one for the crew operating that many flights, and one of them even did the last marathon after operating for 7 days in Florida. We got invited, so just did it with fair play. So it's a huge variety of work, and again, we're always, I suppose, one of our spirits is entrepreneurism, and therefore opportunities that come up, whatever they might be, if we can do it, we always have a look at, and often the more challenging or more interesting the better, because it plays right to our strengths at that point.
So Adam, you know Titan Airways and Stefan really well. What would you say you have found most inspiring about the way that Titan has approached its business over the past few years?
Well, it's probably a riff on that nimbleness that Stefan's talking about, because they clearly rise to every challenge. I don't want to make Stefan's blood boil too early on, but the way in which Brexit affected businesses in the UK, I'd say Titan is one of those that got particularly affected by that, and the way they dealt with that, as maybe Stefan can explain, was really admirable, because essentially you had to create another airline.
Yes, we have. Yeah, absolutely.
So now you're running 2, not 1.
Which still pains us most days, but that's the consequence of the decision that we had to make. So essentially, post-Brexit, as a UK airline, we lost access to the intra-European market. So you have to be a European carrier to fly intra-EU. So that was a reasonable percentage of our work, both on the cargo and the passenger side. Particularly the cargo side now, we have 3 narrow-body freighters, so they typically fly for your integrators, so your DHLs, UPSs, people like that. The market in the UK doesn't support that kind of aircraft. So it's all intra-European stuff from all the big freight hubs, and you can't do that as a UK carrier. So I had the choice of shrinking back to a UK market, which is only of a certain size, or creating a second EU airline, which we did in only a short few months of lots of long hours from a lot of people to spin up what would often take 12 months. We did in 3, I think it was 3 or 4.
The reason I picked on that is I wrote down entrepreneurialism because you mentioned it, and that's exactly what they were exhibiting doing that. I didn't actually remember the details of the speed with which it was done, but that management team clearly had to get together quickly to solve an issue. It was either, as you say, shrink back down, that sounds easy, or go for the other option, the hard one. Guess which one they did?
Yeah, we left it late consciously because we knew the cost of setting up a second airline, both financially but also resource and everything that came with it. So we didn't want to go early on the hope that life wouldn't quite end up where it did. But so that was why we ended up on the shorter time frame. But we knew, obviously, with the team we have and the skill set, the management, the depth of expertise, we could make it happen in that time frame, and most can't.
So aside from blood, sweat and tears in that 3-month window, what do you think are the kind of key behavioural traits that you have within that management team that enable that level of agility and that entrepreneurial approach?
Good question. Part of it's just technical knowledge, experience, but the biggest bit is, as in most cases, the attitude of the people, in that we all buy into what we're doing, and therefore we'll find a way to make it work. So that's what creates the drive. Obviously, the drive is part of it, but it then has to come with a depth of knowledge of people that have been in the industry at Titan or wider industry for a long period of time, that we have then a breadth of skill set that exactly know what they're all doing. So the level of knowledge and understanding to make it happen is there, always on the front foot, but always we don't take no is not an art. We don't accept no until we've explored every single opportunity. And yeah, so it's that side that ripples through most of what we do on any given day, and obviously it really comes to the fore when you face particular challenges.
So would you say that the entire business, and certainly the senior leadership team, are all responsible for that agility of thinking, that innovation, that coming up with new revenue opportunities and then commercialising it, rather than individuals having that remit?
Yes, I guess so. It's something we probably take for granted slightly, and we don't have. Yeah, obviously we have job titles and areas of specialism, but as a collective, we all want the business to succeed and do different things. So, in any given scenario, like setting up another airline, people come together as a team very well, and we transitioned an aircraft last weekend between our 2 operating certificates. Normally it takes 72 hours. We did it, and during the week we did it in less than 48 hours over a weekend. There were some challenging moments where we thought we weren't quite going to make it, but we had a revenue flight on the Sunday evening for our customer that we were not going to let down. So we had from early hours of Saturday until Sunday tea time to take a normal 3-4 day week process, because of experience, knowing what we need to do and making sure that everyone on board, whether it's in Titan or the external parties, are engaged in making sure that this is real. We need to make this happen. And just because it's a weekend, and it's getting people bought into, that's what we need to do, and here's why, so please, let's get it done.
So Doug, is it fair to say, do you think, that Essex as a whole is still feeling the legacy, I think the bregacy, you may have coined a new phrase, the legacy ultimately, post-pandemic, post-Brexit? Are we seeing that across the board within Essex, do you think?
Yeah, I think it has had a different impact on sectors. Some sectors have been sort of way more impacted than others, but you can see it when you go down that list. And Essex has a strong heritage of transport and logistics companies as well. And our experience of speaking with those businesses over the last 3 years has been, it's been a real challenge to make sure their businesses are fit for purpose coming out the other side of it.
And what does that look like from an investment? Because obviously what we're seeing in the report is really successful growth. But what does that mean in terms of debt, in terms of financing that growth? What's the landscape looking like?
Well, I guess the report itself points to the fact that gearing has increased year on year. So that now lands at 75% versus 71% last year. Interestingly, we were chatting the other day about your business has run contrary to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, what we were sort of thinking was fascinating was how have you managed to achieve a decrease in gearing whilst managing such a challenging trading environment coming out the other side?
The main reason probably is lack of opportunities to grow the fleet. So the part of it is we haven't. So whilst our top line might have grown and certainly recovered post-COVID, there's been a lot of investment, but that's come from cash. Like most businesses, particularly aviation, took a hammering in COVID. So there was a kind of a period of 2 years of rebuilding. But our owner despite working in an industry that you would think has an element of, it's a risky industry typically. He's a very cautious individual, so we don't grow for growth's sake. We like to keep debt low. Money is, yes, taken out to an extent, but a lot of it is reinvested. So all of those factors meant that post-COVID we took certain loans out during COVID. We cleared what we could as soon as we could. And what we actually have left now is the term loans for the aircraft we acquired several years ago. We refinanced them during COVID to defer the payments out slightly, but they've run out in a couple of months' time. But it's given us the headroom to grow when the time is right, when an opportunity that we want to take advantage of, when the market makes sense to do that, and we haven't necessarily seen that in the last couple of years. So we've kind of been on a bit of a pause waiting because, again, as part of the business is we don't do it just because. It's got to make sense for the long term. So you might see our gearing move eventually if an opportunity to buy an aircraft or two pops up, then it will shift the other way. But until then, we'll build the resilience and wait.
Well, it certainly put you in terms of a fantastic position for optionality moving forward.
Correct, yeah.
And have you got any idea what the future looks like in terms of growth? What are the plans look like for the next 3 years?
That's a very difficult question to answer at Titan. No, I had no idea. The entrepreneurism will remain, and
is it too obvious to say it only comes from increasing the fleet, or are there other ways?
For the growth, yeah, pretty much. We're doing very well at maximising what we currently have, and where we haven't been able to grow the revenue in the last couple of years by not being able to increase the fleet size, the focus has shifted from maximising what we can from the assets, but also then margin. So it's really focusing on efficiency of operations, delivering to the customer as well, which is always a focus, but it comes right back into let's really, really nail that down. And we've seen the last 2 years, particularly this year, that really come and bearing fruit in that whilst top line hasn't necessarily grown, we're seeing an increased margin by that focus, which again, it helps for the platform going forward. The next step for any real significant growth has to be an aircraft, which we are acquiring one at the moment, which should be with us in May. That'll be a small uplift as a smaller aircraft. But it's the next big contract because a customer need that we discover we can deliver, or opportunities to purchase aircraft.
So you're working with Four Seasons Hotel Group, aren't you, on some VIP tours? I can't wait to get booked in personally. It sounds amazing.
They are, yes.
But I'm interested to understand, I suppose, how that new revenue stream, if it's a new revenue stream, happens.
We don't have a specific business development director. We do have, obviously, the commercial team and the commercial director. But the aviation industry is it's global, but actually it's a relatively small number of players. So it's then around the connections across various people, the senior leadership team. We all take an ownership for the networking side, whether that's the chairman, CEO, the commercial director, operations director, myself, to keep connected to the various parts of the industry. And opportunities then can come, the initial sort of question can come from almost any of us. We're currently working on a very large potential freight contract, and that the initial contact came from our ops director and actually through myself as the potential customer saying, look, we've got a need, we think you could help. How do we start that conversation? Back to the Four Seasons, the contract is with it's a US tour operator holds the contract. That's a relationship that we've had probably 20 years, never did work previously, it went somewhere else, but just keeping that connection going, that when they're coming around for the renewal of it's a long-term agreement, they contact us because that's the kind of stuff we can do. And it starts with that initial inquiry, and then for something, it's a very complicated contract, so then there's a number of people involved in that first scoping phase, to then through to delivery. Myself and our CEO at the time were very much, because it's a bespoke contract, written literally from a blank sheet of paper. And that, again, that's where we excel, that creativity piece. So we started scoping what works for the customer, what works for us, and how we can put that together to create a situation that's a win-win,
So if you could frame, I suppose, for a business that was looking to replicate a similar entrepreneurial approach, at a senior leadership team level, how would you frame that for them? Is there a certain kind of structure or no structure that you think works best?
That's hard. It's a living thing. It's hard, and it's something that we probably just, again, I said it before, take for granted, in that it's who we are. And it starts always, most cultures will always start from the top, that is the behaviour that's exhibited. We're currently going through a process about trying to get our values on the wall, and we're really struggling with actually putting them on the wall, because suddenly it feels far less real when it's in a poster or some other way than actually when people start with us on an induction, you're expressing and you can see and hear what the real emotion that comes with that value. As soon as you put it into a two-dimensional piece on the wall, we're really struggling with that at the moment, and there's conflicts about whether we do or don't do that. So you've got to feel it, you've got to believe it, and you've got to have the right characters that then very much fit. We often call ourselves a little bit of a Marmite company, and that's from our operational staff as well as the support staff, is because what we do is different. As a pilot, if you want to be at home every night, you can't work for us. You need to go work for a scheduled carrier, and we know that, and we don't hide behind the fact that it's going to be different. People have to be on board with that, and if you want different, then we are the perfect place for you. If you want structure, you need to work somewhere else. So it's knowing that's a critical part, and having people that then want to be creative, want to be challenged, want to do different things. So that uncertainty that comes with that, you've got to be comfortable in that position. And you see people that have come from the larger organisations, particularly, that like a bit of structure and report lines and hierarchies. They often really, really struggle. Some can adapt, and that's always when we're interviewing. It's when you're asking people from larger organisations to move. A critical piece is, do we think they can adapt?
I think in the report we've seen, haven't we, how much behaviour, culture, values has come through with, I think, all of the leaders that we've spoken to, whether it's on this series or at the event itself. What are the key things that you're taking away from that, Adam?
Well, I think what Stefan was saying there was echoing what Spencer Gore was saying. He used the phrase "recruit on values." You're demonstrating to these individuals what the values are that you guys have, and you need them to buy in. Almost either equal or possibly more important than skill set. Almost like skill sets are given, and therefore they've got to get involved. Skill
set can also be trained. The values and the culture and the character, you can't. There's very little you can do to change those. It's 100% more important. So,
do you find that the way you've just described how you want to attract talent, it really does work for you, or actually does it make it more difficult? But the result is that you get the right people, but is it still making it a little bit harder for yourselves?
You've narrowed the pool down, so it naturally makes it, because we try to be picky where we have the ability to, because we want the right people, we want good caliber people. We're blessed that because of what we do, in the industry, aviation is an interesting industry, but also what we do in that industry is also interesting. You tend to attract, if you want to go work in finance, for example, we have an apprentice scheme. We've got a number of apprentices over the last few years, because we find that you can find the right caliber of individual, and home grow them and teach them everything they need to know. But we're blessed with, there's been a conversation around sort of younger workers and what that looks like. We're blessed with a very talented crop of individuals, because we get to choose probably from the top, because we attract a lot of attention for what we do. If you're going to go work in finance, there's many places you could do that, but there's probably not too many that are going to give you the exposure, the insight, and the fascination of what we do. So that certainly helps for the non-operational roles. Operational is a bit different. That's harder, because you're typically attracting people from more typical airlines. You're then asking them to adapt, and that often can be harder.
So are you optimistic about access to talent?
Certain areas of business, yes. Other parts, no. It ranks certainly top 3 in certain parts of our business as our key risks. The pilot market was buoyant, that's calmed down a bit, so it's not so bad. If we were to grow significantly, I think that would be difficult. Engineering is a national problem in the skill set and the shortage of people coming into the engineering side. It's an aging workforce without a natural supply chain. So again, we've the last few years we've got apprenticeship program, and we've got a couple more will be starting in the autumn from that side. That's not a quick fix, and that is a real. It's not unique to us. It's not unique to this region.
So Essex is paying its people more. I think that the report shows it's 7.5% average increase. What are the things that you're seeing organisations do in addition to paying more that it is encouraging retention of talent?
I think salary is obviously an important factor of how why people go to work every day. But just listening to Stefan itself, I guess sort of the stuff that you push around the edges, is adds to more than that, doesn't it? So what is the training and development opportunities that you can have over the life cycle of your career? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I guess we talked about the culture and belonging within an organisation, but also I guess beyond just the core salary, what are the benefits you get around that? And that could be in relation to holidays, sort of pensions, cycle to work schemes. There are many forms of benefits, and I guess if you sort of wrap those together, it's part of the package around what is attractive for an individual to want to work in an organisation.
So we were talking earlier, and it kind of feels like we're talking to you today on the eve of the tariff Armageddon. Does that impact you? Will that impact you?
Who knows? It depends what mood he turns up in, for one thing, as to where it actually lands. But direct impact on day one, not overly concerned. Could be proven wrong. It's the ripple effect that it will likely have through the supply chain is where we would feel it. So it's not going to be a day one thing, but if it, this is the supply chain. The aviation supply chain is incredibly complex. So if that starts to, and it's strained and has been strained since COVID, and the growth of the industry hasn't allowed it to necessarily recover. So there's little tolerance for shocks within the supply chain. So anything that affects, if part of that supply chain falls over because of the tariffs, cause issues that the ripple effect will be felt, and potentially not recovered from too quickly as well. So it's kind of very much a watching brief on that for us. We don't expect direct impact, but ultimately if there is a cost associated to it, it will flow to consumers, which then has a knock-on effect as well. We're business to business, so we don't necessarily get hit on day one of consumer confidence, but it flows through the system.
Gets you at the end.
Gets us in the end. So.
And what are your thoughts, Doug, on Essex Top 100, kind of broadly speaking, in terms of what's coming down the track with tariffs?
It's an uncertain time, I think that's for sure. Whilst we have had Brexit, the UK economy is still sort of pretty impacted by what's happening in broader Europe. So whilst we're unsure of the impact on tariffs with the UK at the moment, to the extent Europe is impacted, I think UK will come into that. So I guess the point is, what does that mean through the supply chain, and what impact does that have on businesses within the top 100? We have a diverse group of businesses. There will be an impact, but I guess the positive aspect of that is we've seen an entrepreneurial approach to growth going forwards, and I suspect that the businesses within that top 100 will pivot, will adapt, and will find a new way to grow.
So any of these businesses could be adversely impacted in one way, but find another way to achieve that growth back. And that's what we expect from Essex, because we've seen it time and time again.
So what's the biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment, and what's the biggest opportunity that you see on the horizon?
Brexit is still a challenge with the marketplace, but interestingly, as Anna was sort of saying, what can become a challenge becomes an opportunity. So we won the King's Award for international trade last year. We awarded it for growth in international trade, which off the back of Brexit feels like, and Brexit has materially impacted us, but you then say you have to take stock of that and decide how you want to address that and what you're going to do. And that international growth came in Europe, which we were materially affected by, but also from the US. So it's an example of where what looks like it's going to hit you front and centre as a challenge actually becomes a positive if you can find a way through it. We need growth. You can't afford to stay still, but it doesn't have to be exponential growth, but you've got to keep moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, Stefan. I think it's been a fascinating conversation, and so interesting to just go behind the balance sheet a little bit. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.